Welcome back, Keyforgers. It is Worlds Collide time again. Let's open it up and hope we can get some Dis and Infernus action. Let's have a look. Or maybe an Anomaly. Right way up. Green Archon. Fignor of Northland Tomb. Star Alliance, Shadows, and Dis. And that's a very mechanical looking Archon there. Let's take a close look. There is a close look at that Archon there. I think we've had 3 green Archons in a row so far. Bottom card coming out, turning over. We are starting out with Star Alliance. Forging an Alliance is an action. You get an amber when you play it. To play, forge a key at +7 current cost, reduced by 1 amber to a maximum of 6 for each house represented among cards in play. Quad Recorder is an upgrade. Your opponent's keys cost +1 amber for each house represented among friendly creatures to a maximum of 3. Nurse Soto, 3 power with deploy. Play, fight, reap. Heal 3 damage from each of Nurse Soto's neighbours. Sensor Garcia, 3 power. Play, fight, reap. Keys cost +2 amber during your opponent's next turn. Red Alert is an action. Play. If there are more enemy creatures than friendly creatures, deal damage to each enemy creature equal to the difference. Medic Ingram, 3 power. Play, fight, reap. You may heal 3 damage from a creature and ward it. Explo Rover, 3 power. Skirmish may be played as an upgrade instead of a creature. With the text, this creature gains Skirmish. Commander Chan, 4 power. Fight, reap. Use another friendly creature. A second Commander Chan. Cloaking Dongle is an upgrade. You get an amp when you play it. This creature and each of its neighbours gains Elusive. Arms Master Melina, 4 power, Hazardous 3. Each of Arms Master Melina's neighbours gains Hazardous 3. A second Arms Master Melina. We are on to Shadows, starting out with Mac the Knife, 3 power Elusive. You may use Mac the Knife as if it belonged to the active house. Action. Deal 1 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, gain 1 amber. Subtle Chain is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, your opponent discards a random card from their hand. Special Delivery is an artifact. You get an amber when you play it. Omni ability. Sacrifice Special Delivery. Deal 3 damage to a flank creature. If this damage destroys that creature, purge it. No Safety in Numbers is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play. Deal 3 damage to each creature that belongs to a house that has 3 or more creatures in play. Chain Gang, 3 power. After you play Subtle Chain, ready, Chain Gang. Action, steal 1 amber. Shuffle a Subtle Chain from your discard pile into your deck. Umbra, 2 power with Skirmish. Fight, steal 1 amber. Simon, 1 power Skirmish. Fight, put the creature Simon fights on top of its owner's deck. Pestering Blow is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, deal 1 damage to a creature and enrage it. Inky Gloom is an action. Play, your opponent cannot use creatures to reap on their next turn. A second Inky Gloom. Hawk is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, destroy an artifact. If you do, gain 1 amber. Breaker Hill, 1 power Elusive. Each of Breaker Hill's neighbours gains action, steal 1 amber. And finally on to Dis, starting out with 3 Fates. It's an action, you get an amber when you play it. Play, destroy the 3 most powerful creatures. Snag, 5 power. Fight, your opponent must choose the house of the creature Snag fights as their active house on their next turn. A second Snag. Bloodshard Imp, 2 power. After a creature reaps, its controller must sacrifice it. Rock Grub, 1 power. Play, your opponent loses 1 amber. Reap, archive Rock Grub. Not Finished With You is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, shuffle any number of creatures from a discard pile into your deck. A second Not Finished With You. And a third Not Finished With You. Misery Exploit is an action. Play, gain 1 amber for each damaged enemy creature. Malison, 5 power. Fight, you may move an enemy creature anywhere in its controller's battle line. Then if it is on a flank, it captures 1 from its own side. Harbinger of Doom, 2 power, 3 armor. Destroyed, destroy each creature. Eterome, 4 power. Reap, destroy a creature of the house with the most creatures in play. Okay, so I think Star Alliance was a really good house there. Not too sure about the shadows. The disc seemed okay, but no, in fairness. Let's have a look. Getting straight into this breakdown, we have 11 printed amber. There are 13 actions, 20 creatures, 1 artifact, and 2 upgrades. If we start with amber control, it's okay. It's definitely better than the last deck we opened. In this, we have the Rot Grub. When you play it, your opponent loses 1 amber. That's a straight loss. And then when you reap with Rot Grub, you archive it. So you'll reap, gain an amber yourself. It goes into your archives. Only having the 1 power, your opponent is most likely going to take it out though. Malison, 5 power. It has a fight ability. You may move an enemy creature anywhere in its controller's battle line. If you put it on a flank, it will capture 1 from your opponent. And then obviously that is available for you to take them out and gain the amber. It's 5 power. It must survive the fight. No armor, so you could probably put it off once, maybe twice. In Star Alliance, we had Sensor Chief Garcia, 3 power, play, fight, reap. Keys cost +2 during your opponent's next turn. In Keyforge, anything that increases a key cost for your opponent is good. And on that, we have Quad Recorder, which is one of the upgrades in the deck, saying your opponent's keys cost +1 for each house represented among friendly creatures to a maximum of 3. So if we had a Star Alliance, a Dis, and a Shadows creature out, your opponent's keys cost +3 while this is in play. Being a Shadows deck, it didn't have that much control. We had the Umbra. 2 power Skirmish, so it's going to survive the fight, and with the fight ability of Steel 1, it's very nice. We have Breaker Hill. 1 power Elusive, each of its neighbours gains action Steel 1. Keeping Breaker Hill alive is very tough. When we're playing it, what we're trying to do is have 2 creatures either side of Breaker Hill that are the same house. So if you can call that house, you can use the action twice. You could put 1 Disc creature one side and 1 Star Alliance the other. So it gives you more opportunity to steal when you switch houses. But to be honest, doesn't stay on the board long enough with that 1 power. Very susceptible to being sniped off very quickly. And then we have one of my favourite cards in the entire game, Chain Gang. 3 power. It's got a lovely passive ability of after you play Subtle Chain, you ready Chain Gang. As an action, it's Steal 1 amber. Shuffle a Subtle Chain from your discard pile into your deck. Because there is a full stop there and it doesn't say after or you have to, it means that you do action Steal 1, then you get the option to, if you've got a Subtle Chain in your discard pile, you can put it in your deck. But apart from that, it's just a straight Steal 1. The Subtle Chain does have an amber pip, and it's when you play it, your opponent discards a random card from their hand. Now, I think the minimum you get is 1. We only got 1. I've seen 3 as a maximum. 2 is usually average. If you've been watching my videos, you know I love hand hate or opponent's hand hate. Anything that limits the number of cards your opponent can draw if they have to discard cards or they can't play certain cards. I love card hate, and this is one of my favourite cards. If we look at expected amber, anything that stole in the amber control will be considered expected amber. So you have the steal from the Chain Gang, the Breaker Hill, and the Umbra. You could also include Malison in there because the amber comes from your opponent's pool and then you can get it when you destroy that creature. On top of that, if we start out with this, we had Misery Exploit, gain 1 for each damaged enemy creature. We do have ways of damaging our opponent's battle line, but not all at once. So I don't see it being a big ramp. We have Mac the Knife, 3 power in Shadows. Elusive, you can use it as if it belonged to the active house, so it is a big house cheat creature. You can always use it on your turn. Action, deal 1 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, gain 1 amber. It's got a built-in Seeker Needle. One of the ways we could put damage on our opponent's creatures for that Misery Exploits, or just use it to take out annoying 1 power creatures or low health creatures. We have Hawk, which is considered amber control because it says destroy an artifact. If you do, gain 1 amber. So when you play it, if you destroy your artifact or your opponent's artifact, you gain in 2 amber. It is also the only artifact control we have in the deck. In Star Alliance, we have 2 Commander Chan, 4 power with the fight and reap ability of using another friendly creature. That's an out of turn house cheat, so you can possibly reap or use an action like steal. And then finally, we had Forging an Alliance, which is the Star Alliance key cheat. It's an action you get an amber when you play it, and you forge a key at +7 current cost. Now, if normal cost is 6, that's going to be a 13 amber you're going to need to forge a key, but you get to reduce it by 1 to a maximum of 6 for each house represented among cards in play. So if you and your opponent are playing different houses, and all houses are represented on the board, you will forge a key at 7, if the base cost is 6. The artifact control, like I said, is just that hock there. And creature control. Starting out with Star Alliance, we have the Red Alert. Now this only really benefits you if your opponent has more creatures. You get to deal damage equal to the difference between your creatures and enemy creatures. So if you've got more, this card is never going to work. In Dis, we had 3 Fates. You destroy the 3 most powerful creatures. That includes your battle line as well, so just be careful. We have Harbinger of Doom. 2 power, 3 armor with the destroyed effect of wipe the board. Destroy each creature. A Bloodshard Imp, 2 power. After a creature reaps, its controller must sacrifice it. Nice way for us to activate our Harbinger, because it does affect us as well. Be careful with this card, because sometimes it can be more detrimental to you than your opponent. Eterome, 4 power, reap, destroy a creature of the house with the most creatures in play. Again, that could be yours if you have more creatures in play of a certain house. And that's more likely if you and your opponent are playing the same house or 2 or 3 of the same house. In Shadows, we had Simon, 1 power skirmish. When you fight, you put the creature that Simon fights on top of its owner's deck. With the skirmish, it means that this is going to pop off unless you're running into a hazardous. We have 2 Inky Gloom. Your opponent cannot use creatures to reap on their next turn. If you play this, it does mean that your opponent is either going to dump a load of new cards from a different house on the board, or they're just going to fight into your battle line. If you're playing against Brobnar or Sanctum, it could be quite devastating for you because we don't have tremendously big creatures in this deck. We have Pestering Blow, deal 1 damage to a creature and enrage it. Nice way of preventing an action or reap ability on a creature. Special Delivery, the other artifact we had. Omni ability, so you can activate it out of a Shadow's turn as well. Sacrifice it and deal 3 damage to a flank creature. If this damage destroys that creature, purge it. No Safety in Numbers is an action. Play, deal 3 damage to each creature that belongs to a house that has 3 or more creatures in play. Again, yours and your opponent's. It's got an amber pip on. It might not be one of the ones that you want to play. Now, there were some cards that weren't considered control that I think are. The Explo Rover, if you play it as a creature or as an upgrade, it gets skirmished. So you get to fight and you don't take any damage. And then we had the 2 Arms Master Melinas, 4 power with Hazardous 3. And each of its neighbours gains Hazardous 3. So if you have played an Inky Gloom, having these Arms Masters on the board does beef up your battle line if your opponent does decide just to go guns blazing and fight into your battle line. There was no efficiency in the deck, so no archiving, no additional card draw. We did have some recursion. We had 3 not finished with you. So when you play it, you shuffle any number of creatures from your discard pile into your deck. It's a nice way of cycling, especially if you've been board wiped. They do have amber pips on. It says shuffle any number of creatures, so you could choose 0. So you can play it just for that amber pip. Finally, if we go to Disruption, we obviously have that chain gang with that subtle chain. The subtle chain being the primary disruption in the deck. And then we had 2 snags. 5 power with the fight ability of your opponent must choose the house of the creature snag fights as their active house on their next turn. As I mentioned just a while ago, I love anything that can dictate what your opponent has to do. Snag is one of them. There's Snag's Mirror. There's lots of action cards. Most of them primarily in Dis that force your opponent to pick a specific house. If it's nearing endgame, it can win you the game. And I've lost many games where I haven't been able to call the house that would allow me to take my opponent off check. There were some cards left over that we haven't gone through from this deck. We have Cloaking Dongle in Star Alliance. In fact, they're all from Star Alliance. It's the other upgrade, and it gives the creature you play on and each of its neighbours elusive. Again, shoring up your battle line. We have Medic Ingram. 3 power, play, fight, reap. You heal 3 damage from a creature and ward it. And then Nurse Soto. 3 power, deploy. When you play, fight, or reap, you heal 3 damage from each of Nurse Soto's neighbours. So on a Star Alliance turn, it is possible we can do a bit of fighting and regenerating of our creature's health. If you're interested in the scoring, it was 59 SAS, which I think is pretty low because we do have quite a bit of everything. 11 printed amber is around about average. If you can maintain a board, I think it's a pretty good deck. But they do consider it to be like 50% of all the decks that are out there. But that is just according to decks of Keyforge. So if you'd like to have a closer look, the link to the Master Vault is in the description. All that remains for me to say is good luck, have fun, keep forging.